All right, thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon for this panel discussion on elevating the profession through national board certification. I'm Ellen Sherrod. I'm Vice President for Policy and Research at the National Board, and I'm just so thrilled to be at this conference again with the most inspirational, informed, thoughtful, just all-around awesome group of experts in the field. And STOY and National Board have so much in common in our missions. The potential just seems limitless for what we can do in collaboration. By show of hands, it would be helpful for us to have a sense of who is in this room. So could you raise your hand if you are a National Board certified teacher? Yay! And if you are a candidate? Woo! So for all of you who are neither NBCTs nor candidates, I hope that after hearing from our wonderful panelists today, you'll feel inspired to pursue board certification. And for those of you who are board certified or candidates, I hope that at this conference and when you go back to your schools and districts, you'll encourage your colleagues to pursue board certification and help them see the value that it will have for them personally, for their students, and for elevating the profession. As background, for anyone who's less familiar with board certification, the National Board is the nation's voluntary advanced certification system. We were founded 30 years ago and to date have certified over 118,000 teachers in every state in the country. We were founded by teachers and for teachers as a deliberate strategy to elevate the teaching profession. Specifically, we looked to the medical profession as a model. 100 years ago, physicians were not a highly paid, highly respected, prestigious profession. The quality of care that patients received was seen as highly inconsistent until the profession came together, developed standards by and for physicians, developed an intentional career continuum whereby each and every physician would go through a series of stages from entry to accomplished practice, resulting in board certification. And the public's view of the profession and the salaries that they were willing to pay those professionals in medicine completely transformed. So we're hoping to do the same for teaching in partnership with the STOY community and the larger community of teacher leaders. Right now is an especially exciting time for the National Board. Following stagnation in the number of board-certified teachers, the National Board engaged in a redesign of the assessment several years ago based on R&D and feedback from the field. So we have a newly redesigned assessment system. It's now more flexible and more affordable. There's 4 modules that can be completed in any order at any point in time over a 3-year period. And the cost has been brought down as well from $2,500 to $1,900. So each of those modules is $475. And like I said, they can be completed over a 3-year period. So it's imminently doable. We no longer have the situation where teachers are saying that they have to be a bad teacher for a year to prove that they're a good teacher because it's because of the rigor of the assessment. This December, we certified our first cohort of board-certified teachers under the newly redesigned assessment. Over 5,400 teachers across the country received board certification, and nearly 4,000 additional NBCTs renewed their certification. Governors, state chiefs, superintendents, and legislators across the country celebrated the accomplishment of these nearly 10,000 accomplished educators with ceremonies, dedications, and meeting invitations. Of particular note, Washington, Kentucky, Wisconsin, Nevada, Hawaii, New Mexico, and Colorado all increased their NBCT numbers by more than 10%. 370 schools with new NBCTs, who represented 10% of the total, have 3 or more new board-certified teachers, which creates powerful conditions for collaboration that transform school cultures and further scales accomplished teaching. And in Los Angeles, the district that had the largest class of new NBCTs, over half of them were teachers of color. I was at American Institutes for Research for a decade before moving to the National Board a year ago. And I moved because of the solid and mounting research base supporting board certification as an approach to elevating the teaching profession. Over a decade of research consistently shows that board-certified teachers produce, on average, 6 to 8 weeks of additional learning. And the latest research shows that the retention rate of board-certified teachers was 4 times the state average in South Carolina, and that in Washington state, every dollar invested in board certification yielded $32 in long-term savings. So board certification presents endless opportunities for improving teacher practice, addressing teacher recruitment and retention challenges, and elevating the profession in the eye of the public. Of note is the heightened voice that it affords teachers, like being a State Teacher of the Year. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our panelists to hear from them how being a National Board Certified Teacher and a State Teacher of the Year allowed them to use their voice to advance the profession. So we have here Sydney Chafee, who's the 2017 Massachusetts State Teacher of the Year and National Teacher of the Year. She's also a Teach Plus Fellow, an edX Policy Fellow, and a part-time faculty member at Boston University School of Education, among other roles and achievements. We have Stacey Donaldson. Dr. Donaldson is the 2010 Mississippi STOY and National Teacher of the Year, as well as a 2015 Milken Fellow. She spent 12 years in the classroom and currently serves as the National Board Project Director with the Mississippi Department of Education. Kelly Elder is the 2017 Montana State Teacher of the Year and also a member of the Board of Directors for the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. And Tanya Holmes Sutton, who is the director of the Nevada National Board Network to Transform Teaching, the founder and director of the National Board Professional Learning Institute, a member of the Nevada State Board of Education, and also a National Board of Director member, among other roles as well. So I'll turn it over to each of them to go ahead and share their stories. Starting with Stacey. I'm sorry, with Sydney.
And I had failed by 1/10 of a point. And I remember just crying. Just crying and going through sort of the stages of grief. There's like a lot of bargaining and anger. And then what ended up happening was I then had the next year to figure out, well, how was I going to resubmit so that I could earn this certification? Because for me, the certification wasn't going to come with any additional pay. It was really just for me, right? I wanted to see if I could do it. And I wanted to see if I could then, for me, it felt like sort of the highest level that I could achieve as a teacher, right? And I wanted that because I feel like so often teachers, career teachers, don't get the respect that we deserve. And unless we decide to go into administration, which is a really great path for some people, but if that's not the path that we want, sometimes it's seen as, well, you're just a teacher, right? So I thought if I can get national board certification, that will really help to legitimize what I'm doing. And I will really be seen as a professional in this career. So I went back and I rethought one of my portfolio submissions, and I designed a whole new lesson for it. And it turned out to be an amazing lesson. And it has actually continued to be used in my school and in my class over the last few years because it was a powerful lesson that actually really helped kids grow. And I earned my certification that year. But the more important outcome for me was that it helped me really have empathy for kids when they go through failure, right? It helped me really remember to tap back into what it feels like for a child to get feedback that's hard on something that they've worked on and they've poured their heart into, right? And they've been so vulnerable in trying to submit something. And it made me a better teacher because the thing that I ended up developing was really strong. So for me, National Board represents both this journey that I had to go through, this sort of humbling journey, but also this transformative journey of making me a better teacher. The process of National Board, people will often ask me, well, is it worth it? Is it worth it? All the time, all the money, right? And I'll tell them it's some of the most powerful professional development you're going to do, because you're going to lead it, and it's going to come straight out of your classroom and your experiences with your kids. So that's sort of how I got here. I did go through the process alone. I work at a tiny little charter school, and so I was the only teacher at my school who was going through this. No teacher at my school had ever gotten certified. So I think that made it harder to go through it without a cohort. And I know some of my colleagues up here are going to talk about what it was like to go through it as part of a cohort. But that's another thing that I always recommend to folks who are thinking about going for certification, is to make sure that you've got at least one other person who can be your sounding board and be your buddy as you go through it, because it is a really rigorous process. And then in terms of thinking about teacher leadership, like I said, I think that having that level of certification can really legitimize you as an expert, and really make you feel like I am a professional career teacher, and I have reached this high level in my own practice. What I've tried to do with that, and what I've tried to do with the STOY platform and the National Teacher of the Year platform, is to really push on some hard issues, and to think about, what do I need to do as a white educator who now has a platform to talk to other white educators about inequity, about racism, about white supremacy, about injustice, about social justice. So that's been sort of my big push in my teacher leadership journey, is what's the work that I have to do as a white educator to ensure that I'm working towards social justice. And, if you were in the last session in this room, that really builds on what we were talking about and what Jose Wilson was talking about, right? That we need more white teachers to talk to other white teachers about white people stuff. And so that's sort of the thing that I've been trying to do in my work, is think about, okay, now I have this title, I have this certification, I have these letters I can put after my name. So how am I going to use the voice that affords me to actually do some work that's really hard and uncomfortable, but that needs to be done and that matters for our kids? That's me.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Stacey Donaldson, and I am an alternately certified teacher. For years, I referred to myself as an alternately certified teacher. I'm a broadcaster turned teacher, and the first classroom that I taught in, I had no experience, none. So as an expert in journalism or real world language arts, that was the only thing I had to stand on as a first year teacher. Because I was alternately certified in many cases, my peers did not look at me as an expert, or I was not esteemed as a high quality teacher because I did not have that backdrop of experience. And in my own mind, I was like, what am I doing? I was a new mom, and while I was at the TV station, having to stay there for my insurance, that still small voice started just talking to me about what's my purpose in my career, what's my spiritual purpose in my career, and teaching was the answer to that in my mind. So I got my teaching certification, and upon having this bouncing baby girl 10 weeks afterwards, I had my own classroom. And it was a daunting discovery. I don't know if you can that's a juxtaposition. It was scary. It was and I knew I wasn't an expert as it relates to being an educator. So as I had to take classes to achieve my certification as a teacher, I learned about National Board Certification. And one thing about reporters, broadcasters, journalists in general, they have to be a jack of all trades. And in broadcast journalism, you would need to know how to report, know how to shoot, know how to interview, and be able to do it by yourself, and make sure that everything is right, make sure it looks good, make sure you don't make any mistakes. So I had to be a jack of all trades. And as a teacher, I wanted to be an expert. I wanted to, I knew that this was a calling, and I wanted to be the very best teacher that I could be, and National Board Certification was my opportunity to do that. Now, again, I was a real world language artist. So once I started 2 years in, I had gotten my master's, and I learned about the standards, and what going through the process helped me to know and to understand is that there were so many areas in which I was good, and I had no idea, and there was no one in my circle sharing that. I did not have a mentor teacher. This was back in 1998. So I didn't have a mentoring support. So the standards were, it was an awareness of what accomplished teaching was. And I was so thankful for that, because there are plenty of times that teachers go through their early years doing this, is this right? You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about, right? So you're just kind of feeling your way. And with the national standards, I didn't have to feel my way. I knew that I was doing some really good things, but it also showed me that there are some improvements that I need to make. There are some areas that I need to strengthen my practice. So though I was seen as a weak teacher, my story is I certified on the first try. Okay, one thing about not having the traditional background is I came into the profession strong in what I knew how to do, and I knew that I wanted to be an expert. I knew once I started to learn about the standards that there are certain things that I'm doing well in my classroom, and in my mind's eye, I'm going to pass this thing the first time because I don't have time. That's the mother in me talking. I don't have time to do it again. So I'm thankful that I passed the first time, but more importantly, I was thankful to see that, yes, you are doing it right. And it also gave me an opportunity to really model for my colleagues who were at least 10, 11, 15, 20 years into the game, and there was not a lot of collaboration, which is a best practice. There was not a lot of sharing. Professional learning communities did not exist back then. So it just was an awesome thing to take what I had learned as a National Board Certified teacher and then be able to share with other teachers. And I'll talk a little bit in a minute about mentoring pre-service teachers, early career teachers. So National Board Certification was an entry point into teacher leadership for me. I was already board certified when I became the Teacher of the Year, but the National Board piece offered a career continuum for me. I was a professional in the classroom, so there were so many days when I yearned for professionalism, opportunities to feel like I was a professional, and to share with my colleagues. So I didn't have the opportunity in the school, but I did have the opportunity to mentor outside of the school other candidates who were going through the process. So I was thankful for that, and then even as an African American teacher, there were not many teachers that looked like me. So I was thankful for the opportunity to be an example to not just African Americans, but to just teachers in general who sometimes don't feel that they can do it based on what they've heard and based on the myths. I work at the Mississippi Department of Education now, and I'm a myth buster. That's what I do. Yes, surrounding National Board Certification. And there are a lot of myths out there, but one of the biggest things that I'm cognizant of, and I make sure that the NBCTs that I serve, they know, I don't have the power, but the power is on the ground in the visibility and the visibility of National Board Certified Teachers. So, Ellen, you mentioned a minute ago about doctors. 80% of doctors are board certified. 3% of teachers are board certified. Count them, 3%. So in order for us to own our profession, strengthen it, and get the same outcomes, we have to be the accomplished teachers, be the experts, and I'm all for continuing to be the promoter at the state level, but it's getting teachers to be visible, NBCTs to be visible. I will pass the mic on in just a second. Last thing, though, maybe 6 months ago, I was speaking to pre-service teachers at a local university, and one of the NBCTs came up to me and said, I'm not afraid to show and be visible anymore. That is good, because so many NBCTs have hidden because they don't want to be ostracized. They have minimized themselves because they don't want to outshine others that think they are, trying to outshine them. So there still has to be this culture shift where we embrace excellence in educators, in each other. And one way to do that, again, is to be your best self by pursuing a national board certification and encouraging others to do so that we truly own the profession. Thank you.
We can take them to the legislature, we can take them to the state house, and we can try and make things happen. When my governor got elected 6 years ago now, he asked me at the time, what could we do to improve every student in Montana's educational experience? I said, wow, Steve, I'm going to have to think about that. I gave it about a week, and I came back and I said, the one thing we could do, Governor, is get every teacher in the state of Montana to be nationally board certified. Because that gives us a common ground to stand on. I'm nationally board certified. There are those of you in this room that are better teachers than I am. There's no doubt. You're doing better lessons in your room than I am. But wherever you are as a teacher, when you attain that NBCT, you will, out of necessity, become a better teacher. And it will be employed every single day in your classroom. And I believe that in the core of my being. And so for me, that transformation happened, and I said, that's the best we could do, Governor. And so then I went to the legislature and I testified, and we're in a very conservative state who's not very excited about doing much for teachers at all. And our state passed a stipend where we now have a national stipend. It's not anything like the $10,000 I think Florida has a year, but it's, we've got $1,000 coming our way for a teacher in Montana, which is big money to us. And if you're in a high-need school, if you're on a reservation, Indian reservation within Indian country in Montana, or if you're teaching in a high-needs urban school, you're given additional monies up to $2,000 a year. And that's in addition to what your district will do, which for me is another $2,000 a year. The trick is, I've found talking to people, at least the teachers in my building, it's that financial incentive that often gets them going on the journey. But I'm here today to tell you that I believe it's transformed my teaching. And I would encourage anybody thinking about this process to dive in and to grow. And it is the best PD, the best professional development I think you'll find. So.
Good afternoon. My name is Tanya Holmes-Sutton. And my pursuit into national board certification was similar to Stacey's. I am an alternative route to licensure teacher. I come certainly from a family of teachers for generations and generations dating back to the late 1800s. However, I was convinced that that was not the path for me. And when I finally did come home, I needed national board certification to validate for me that I was an excellent teacher for students. I take the charge very, very seriously, as we all do, but I tend to certainly believe that the work that we do, the work that I do, can often be the difference between life and death for children in the communities in which I serve. And so with that, I know that my children and my families deserve the best of me. And with that being said, I set out to pursue board certification. I, like Sydney, traveled alone on that journey. I was at a charter school. I certainly tried to enlist others to travel with me. However, they thought me foolish and were like, yeah, no. You're always over the top, and this seems a little over the top. So traveled that journey alone and did become an advanced candidate. I also missed by one raw point. People encouraged me to appeal, and I reread, and I was like, no, I'm not putting that before anybody again. I definitely grew through that process, but I grew with my students. I did not grow alone. It was a transformational, professional learning that I could not have imagined. Certainly, I was told that this was going to be a process for me to be able to demonstrate to others that I was an accomplished teacher, and I needed that validation for someone who didn't know me and wasn't entering my classroom every day. But it was so much more than what I could have imagined. It changed everything, as Kelly said. It changed the way I viewed my children and the expectations I had for them. And although they were kindergarten students, we spent time together reflecting on what was taking place in the classroom and what was happening in terms of learning and how we could be better and how we could grow. And that mattered, and my families understood that and engaged in that with us as well. It was going into the classroom that I thought that it was my responsibility to carry out whatever the directions were from administration, from the district, from the state, from the legislators, nationally. And it was not until I achieved board certification and went through that process that I became empowered and realized that I have a voice. And not only do I have a voice, I have a responsibility. And so how do I take that and begin to make change and begin to engage in change, begin to really be a difference? And with that, the opportunities that I had previously shied away from, I began to embrace. And when I was invited to lead, I took that charge seriously. When I was asked to serve on the State Board of Education, I then accepted that charge. And I knew that although I am quiet, there is a lot of rebel in me, and that I needed to rebel, and I needed to advocate, and I needed to speak up, and this was a way to be able to do so. And so with that, I have reached out to others and tried to encourage them to pursue board certification. I then pursued an opportunity to serve at the national level and sought out ways to engage with my colleagues across the country. A colleague and I have now formed the Nevada National Board Professional Learning Institute, to provide opportunities across the continuum and to support teachers in board certification, knowing that it is our collaborating and growing and learning and leading together that's going to make a difference for the children in the district and in the state and in the nation. And I would say now, as we grow, we have grown to a leadership of about 26 teachers who are supporting others throughout the state, with a large contingency here in Clark County, but we're making a difference. And in that, we are seeking out professional learning opportunities for ourselves to be able to grow in terms of learning more about social justice and equity and issues that are persisting throughout the country that are making a difference, and we're bringing that back to our candidates in order to have impact on students and on families. So we are committed to advocacy and to leadership, and we will continue to do so, and we invite you to join us. In inviting you to join us, we also would like to take an opportunity to say that there are, for you all, what books in the back of the room. This is what teachers should know and be able to do, the 5 core propositions, the tenets of national board certification, and the national board body of knowledge. And with that, there's also an invitation to invite others. You do not need to be a national board certified teacher to lead and to engage and to share this. And so what we've also provided in the back is a protocol, a book discussion protocol. You can probably also find us doing our madness on Twitter. We're often talking about what teachers should know and be able to do, but it is these guiding questions that will help you to be able to engage your colleagues as well in what is accomplished teaching, what does that look like, and how do we leverage that knowledge of accomplished teaching and the body of knowledge to be able to have impact on students and families and the profession.
Questions from the audience for our panelists? Yep, in the back. Yay! So the question was advice on how to connect with the wider community of National Board Certified Teachers. Does anyone want to respond to that?
The STOY NBCT group. Yeah, and if you'd like, let me know and I'll get you connected with that.
There's also another group on Facebook, National Board Certified Teachers. That group was started by Mitch Goodkin in New York, and it has grown exponentially. I'd say perhaps a few hundred National Board Certified teachers and candidates, and to now over 4,000 teachers who are in that space. And so not only can you connect there with other National Board Certified teachers, but also those who are supporting them, as well as candidates. And I would say certainly Twitter. There are a lot of individuals who are supporting and following one another as National Board Certified teachers. Team NBCT.
Over 70 National Board Certified Teacher networks around the country exist. And if there's not one in the area where you live, we'd encourage you to create one. One more question? Yep. So the question is, what's the National Board doing to try to promote more board certified teachers of color? For one, we're trying to just raise awareness through panels like this and showcasing the voice of board certified teachers who are from diverse backgrounds. We're also trying to partner with minority serving institutions. One of the key areas of focus for the National Board right now is to make pursuing board certification a natural act, or just like a universal expectation for every new teacher, so that it's just that natural progression that everyone sees themselves headed towards. And we're in particular trying to kind of to promote that mindset and that career trajectory among communities of teachers of color through partnerships with minority serving institutions. That we are also always like really actively highlighting the voice of board certified teachers of color on social media. If there are other suggestions that you or anyone has for us, we are all ears. This is a big priority for the National Board right now. Do any of the panelists have any thoughts you would add?
I would agree with the excuse me. Hello. Would agree with all that National Board is doing, but also that some of the networks inside of the states are doing their own thing as well. Washington particularly hosting leadership opportunities and informational meetings for teachers of color. And I think that we also have to be mindful, and I think we are intending to do that in our network here in Nevada, in what are the barriers. And often it has been to that serving in communities that are marginalized, there are overwhelming responsibilities that are preventing teachers from pursuing. A lot are saying, I've got a lot on my plate. That's not one more thing that I can do. And so trying to communicate that it is accessible. And then I would say to you, and I know, Ellen, we're coming to a close, it is never, ever, ever, ever too late. One of the gentlemen who is pursuing board certification at one of the schools is 70 years old. Mm-hmm. So now I'm all about no excuses.
So we're at time. One of the things we were going to do was to just point you to our brand new Teacher Advocacy Toolkit. I won't walk you through it, but we'll just note that it is... Oh, okay. Well, you could quickly go to the link. If we'll spend 1 minute on this. It's right on our website, which is nbpts.org. On that page, there's a link to policy resources, and on that page, you'll see the Teacher Advocacy Toolkit, which includes a number of resources that are meant to support teachers in thinking through what your story is that you want to tell policy leaders and influencers, how to go about arranging meetings with them, basic resources on just like the legislative process as a refresher, and how policies are developed. Don't worry about finding the resource, and other tools there. So I encourage you all to visit the website, check out the Advocacy Toolkit, use the Advocacy Toolkit, and use your voices as board certified teachers, as STOYs, and as teacher leaders. Hopefully you found this session inspiring and informative, and we hope you'll go forth and carry the message forward to your colleagues here and back at your homes. So thank you again to our panelists, and thank you to all of you.